All right, shoot. Well, another thought just came full circle. Um, so if we're to try to imagine like what the afterlife is or what heaven is, it's like the only atheistic perspective that I can accept that would assume that the universe is mind, because that's pretty much the given in both equations, that whether you're spiritual and believe that God can do anything by thought, then the universe is mind. If you believe that you're atheist and the universe has like a geometric only algorithm and it's just so fine that we can't conceive it, then basically we are functions of this imagination. And so what heaven or what the afterlife to us would be then would be liberation from this thought train, this mental state that, side note, is occurring in perfect, like, what's that called? Like an LED function, a diode. It's like function like a diode with the on and off, where it's like day and night, sleep and wake, as two different mental states. But we experience it as continuous, even though the time is obviously warped and subjective in the sleep state versus the waking state. Um, well, that's another thing, because sleep will point us out that time is irrelevant. So if we can imagine a a life completely freed from this physical body and our imagination persists, which I can't imagine it not. It either, from my experience, it evolves into, something infinite, which, seeing all possibilities simultaneously, basically, or, you know, the one, the infinite mind, God, the Atman, yeah, um, not Brahman in Hindu, what's it called? Shoot, anyways. If we're to imagine the afterlife, though, and the only atheistic perspective that I can, like, the lowest atheistic perspective that I can accept, I guess, is that heaven is merely a product of our imagination as it exists when we leave this physical life. And in that scenario, if heaven becomes whatever we fill our minds with, then I'm still going to opt to fill my minds with the most quality materials and roots for my imagination or for whatever to develop, because I mean, we would have perfect memory of everything we experienced here and then freedom to probably develop, because like in my mind right now I can choose, okay, that's a yellow circle, turn it into a purple triangle. Like, I can choose my thoughts, like, and so we can only imagine that in the infinite track that there would be a similar experience of choice or agency in the thoughts that we hold. Like, see, all our mind is a manifold. The mind is just a manifold for the universe. That's why if we meditate, we see basically like animations of consciousness, like infinite consciousness and imagination, filtered through the memories that we've experienced, but everything's like symbolic or recombinations of different things, and it's all to give us like an infinite mirror to ourselves and to what existence and reality is. And so if we take the time to be quiet and experience life like this, then we realize that the potential really is infinite for what we decide gives us purpose and what we want to give us purpose. But I'll still go by the model that what we are experiencing in this reality dictates that within a universal mind, sub-mind, since there are many of us and we are equally conscious, although the opacity is turned up and down depending on how tuned in we are. If we can see ourselves and each other as equal forces in this mind and as separate points of it, points of intelligence, or separate radio towers almost, just receivers of this universal intelligence, then we can understand that it is possible to have separated intelligences from the one intelligence. That, like, we are living proof of that source can manifest in sub-intelligences that are fractals of its own existence. And so we can only imagine that as we continue to progress in this life, if we were only given, like, if I were to die tomorrow, I could take everything that I've learned in this life. I need water. If you couldn't tell, I'm struggling. If I only could carry with me the experiences that I've had so far in life, and I then gained a perfect recollection of them, as it's promised in, like, scripture, basically. That's like what hell is. Hell is like a perfect recollection of your guilt, and then heaven's a perfect recollection of the love that you've given out. And so everything is in fear or love. So either whether we are living in fear or love dictates if we're going to heaven and hell, if you're operating on the merely imaginative and experiential models of heaven and hell. But what I'm saying is, if us, this manifold of the mind that we're experiencing right now, is dumbing down, like, it is the veil, right? If it is dumbing down the 99.9% of reality that is actually going on outside, and I can't flip the camera, but the 99% of light that we can't see, that our eyes cannot perceive, and our senses can't perceive. Okay, yeah, that's actually interesting. I wonder what percent of, like, sound vibrations and we can feel as temperature. I wonder if how much the percentage that adds to the spectrum of energy that exists that we can't perceive, because everything really does fall under the same essential energy, and it's just different forms of vibration of each, like different energy levels, to where it becomes physically tangible or only visibly tangible or whatever. All right, we're set. Coconut water, baby. That's like, this is good for the mind. Whenever my mind's working really hard, it craves coconut water, I swear to you. Water of life. Okay, back on track. If we're assuming that us in this dumbed down state right now can continue to progress while dimmed from the actuality of all things, like what real physical reality is, which 99% of it we cannot visibly see. If we can improve in our dimension with that limited ability, then imagine once we're freed from this physical limitation, then I can only imagine that we're experiencing the other 99%. Or perhaps as we experience it and as we understand it, because that is the case with here on Earth, is that here on Earth, the state of our lives and the state of our minds is a construct of what we understand. We stand under what we understand. Like, our existence is based on our understanding of existence. If you're more meditative in your actions because of your knowledge of, like the hopelessness of struggle against nature and chance and all that thing, then you're going to live a more peaceful life, and your worldview is going to be different as well, because you see modern events in the news and such as, essential happenings in the development of a universal mind. Because if we're basically running a simulation right now, then all these events are essential. The Buddha, Jesus Christ, the Hindus' understanding of their gods. It depends on, like, where your understanding of God came from. And so I mean, I subscribe to Christianity because I believe that it's I think that it solves the karmic debt, that nothing besides the sacrifice of Jesus Christ, the submission of his own life, having knowledge of everything that life can be. Imagine this: Christ, being born without a father, was born with half of the veil, having a perfect knowledge of everything that life could be. Why do you think he was so frustrated with everybody? Because he knew out of the infinitude of things that we could choose to do in this life, that people were choosing to live how they were back in the Bible days, And so he's disappointed. Like, he cried multiple times in the scriptures. And so, Christ being an emanation of the universe being God, having a conscience of itself, being self-aware, is not any less, conscious than we are. So if we see God has created us in his own image, that is, as above, so below, as within, so without, as a universe, the soul. So God, having a consciousness of himself as we do, which sets us apart from the animals, he had created our consciousnesses in his spiritual image, and also of our bodies in his physical image, because, as we see through evolution, like, we are kind of the pinnacle of evolution, at least at this point. But, like, what happens if humans keep evolving? Do we keep associating? We don't dissociate from our own species. We'll just become like superhumans or something. Maybe get bigger brains. Who knows? Maybe just get more efficient brains, because the ones that we've got, we're only using 10% of. If that. But it's just crazy to think that 3,000 years ago in scripture, God was talking to people and saying to Jeremiah, before you were in the womb, I knew thee. To say that these fractals of consciousness that we're experiencing now, these personalities, God is saying that he knew them individually before this life. And that rings true to me, because there is something definitely innate around us. Like, you can go to the very center of your consciousness and you're just observing. And then you can come out slowly from there into the world, and there's still certain tendencies that we tend to have. Like, imagine a water drop reflecting a rainbow. And the rainbow represents like different aspects of our personalities. Just imagine that rainbow in all different orders and combinations and things like that. Like, infinite possibilities. That's what we are. It's like we are still truth. We are still essential, essential pieces of intelligence, fractals of intelligence. But we seem to have tendencies, and I say that the physical universe that we're experiencing is a precipitation of the spiritual universe. It's based on laws. Like, if we go back to evolution in the beginning of time, everything has created itself based off of self-assembly. Even if you subscribe to the belief of the Big Bang Theory, which I don't disagree with, being a Christian. But that light, that infinitely small and infinitely dense thing that they describe that created think of infinity. What else is that? That's like, and then a physicist call the essential ether that makes up atoms, that point beyond positive and negative charges, beyond black and white. We're talking about the essential energy that emanates the entire universe. They call it information. So it's intelligent. So intelligence is built into the very energy that makes up the atoms that define our whole body. And everything that we see is the same energy. Now I view death as an opening up to that. And actually, in Mormon doctrine, I grew up LDS, it says that when Christ comes, the earth as we see it will be burnt away like a scroll, like the veil will be lifted from our eyes, and we'll see the earth as a crystal, as it really is. And so now I go back to thinking about the water drop with the rainbow. You know, that's like, if you've ever heard of holographic universe, I'm thinking that on a spiritual level, the earth probably looks more like a star. And maybe space is what's really going on, and our brain is just only picking up like the green grass and stuff like that. It's not seeing all the life processes at the same time simultaneously within, which is, I can already see happening in myself. Like, if I look at a blade of grass, I see the chloroplasts in it, and the chloroplast is like the plant version of mitochondria. It's the powerhouse of the leaf. But if I look at it, my mind opens it up to me, which is, I imagine on an extremely limited level, how God sees everything, right? Because he can zoom in or out as far as he can. Just like, imagine that. It's like, if I can imagine that in my 3-pound brain, ADD is all get out. It's got to be possible. Like, I can even rationalize for that being. I can imagine that I am that being, and I can imagine what position he would take in certain situations. And that, to be honest, that's what I've been doing my whole life, because I grew up LDS. Like, I've been trying to think, like, if the universe had a consciousness and could see everything from every angle, what would it think like? If you could see every situation from every angle, having the background of every intelligence involved, animal, plant, human, imagine what you would see of every situation. There'd be a lot less hate, I'll tell you that. A lot more love. The rainy days wouldn't be so bad. The sunny days would be ecstatic just for being there, for experiencing it, for it happening. Breathing would be seen as more of a blessing. I would be a lot more connected to these little guys. Hi, honey. You're fine. Yeah, I've been talking to animals a lot lately. One of the hummingbirds is this bouncer. He's a jerk. Kicks out all the other ones. I had to talk to him for a bit before he came over and landed on the feeder when he was this close to my head, a foot away. That took a while. Fun stuff. Think about that. What if I decided that I'd have wanted to just like build relationships with animals all day? In the infinite possibility of life and what can be done, that's viable for sure. But the thing is, like, compare that to this. And what we're looking at here is a paramotor. It's my dad's. Me and my dad both paraglide. I really like it because it's like mountain biking, except for there's no moving parts. You just go up to the top of a hill. Usually involves a really nice hike or drive, depending on the day. And then you just, run off the hill and go fly, which sounds really freaking good today. I wish my dad would get home, because we usually go together, get second opinions on the weather conditions and stuff. But it's just safer that way. But when you compare even paragliding to paramotoring with the big fan on your back, paramotoring, you can sustain it forever. If the winds are high enough, you can paraglide forever too. You can stay up for hours and hours as long as you want. If the wind's hitting the mountain that day, the paramotor's kind of the opposite. If there's a lot of wind, you don't paramotor. You just, you can, but the idea is you got a motor on your back and you can launch out my front yard with no wind. But that complicates life, is the point. If I decided I wanted to talk to animals all day, I would need nothing to do that. If I decided I just wanted to meditate every day of my life like the monks do, they deem that as enjoyable as anything else. And when I say enjoyable, enjoy something that puts joy into you, something that is able to put joy into you is enjoyable. And so we like misconceived that for being like, just happiness, but we're not talking about happiness. We're talking about joy and satisfaction and fulfillment. So to a monk, meditation is the most enjoyable thing because it gives the deepest meaning to the time that they have here on earth. That's why they choose to do it. That's why everybody chooses to do everything. But whether they're like properly led or not is up for discussion. Like, people think that the most enjoyable thing to do is commit crimes and do evil stuff, which, I mean, if I want to dive into that for a second, what I think is evil is basically anything that deprives someone else of their time living, be that physical time recovering or mental time recovering. It's like, does your existence add to their time and magnify it, or does it subtract their time or make it darker? You know what I'm saying? Are you adding light or subtracting light from people's time and energy? And that's sin. And so why is it so hard to believe in God if I can figure that out? Right, guys? No need to be prideful. We've got a loving father and mother that are looking out for us from heaven. The divine feminine and masculine, yada yada. It's not just an idea. They're real. And they're the reasons why I can tell you all this stuff with certainty, and it makes sense and it rings true to you, because they're a universal truth, and they're looking for us as we are looking for them. Like, truth wants to find us because we are truth. Dragonflies. Like, everything that we do is a path to enlightenment. It's just a different path, maybe a more crooked path, but it's the path that our consciousness had to take to understand everything that the universe has to show us. Let's go to my favorite tree. So much life happening up in here. How far can you zoom into every little patch of moss, every little thing, and how far can you perceive what is happening in that creature, in that little aphid thing? A little blowing piece of cotton, this little fern that somehow worked its way into the moss in this tree. The birds and the leaves. They're green. Leaves are green because that's the most efficient color to pick up from our sun, because we happen to have a green sun. As far as white light goes, as far as our sun goes, it has a lot of green and yellow light. The moon's kind of pink and yellow. But, green. It's got some green in there too. You know what I'm saying? People travel the entire world, but never get to know their backyard. Yeah. People will drive a car their whole lives and not even know what engine it has. Hello, Mr. B. Can I pet you? Or are you busy? Busy, little busy. Hello, Nugget. Before I get too deep into meditation, I should probably remind y'all that as you first start to meditate, your first thought is to control your breath and to smooth out your breath. But the most effective way to control your breath and smooth out your breath is to stop trying. If you watch your breath, your lungs will always take exactly as much oxygen as they need. Just like how nature does with everything else. So if you stop thinking about your breathing, it does it on its own. Now obviously this becomes a topic of discussion with meditation, because if you watch your breathing, then your thoughts stop. That's why we meditate, and that's why we do breath work. That's why we focus on breathing. Because if you're focusing on your breathing truly, then it starts to consume your thoughts with the concept and aspect and process of breathing. But if you can watch that process in all of its aspects and relinquish control of it to the subconscious forces that guide it when we're not even thinking about it, like, what is anxiety, right? Like, what is stress? There is no danger. Funny little side note, in the same way that breath can be used to meditate and relax and calm, the opposite, like Wim Hof type of breathing techniques, you see how his work on an entire range, and we're talking about the same thing. Like if you watch like DMT Quest, Wim Hof talks about the production of DMT and its effects on your psyche, and how it can be endogenously created or released in your own lungs and pineal gland through breathing exercises and deep meditation, which I knew before I found out. It's just like it makes sense, like you just know it. And it's kind of responsible for that deeply creative state that artists get into. It's like the DMT mind, basically. But Wim Hof talks about like these different breathing practices, and like every type of action, like if you just think about it, so obviously if your body, your muscles need the oxygen, you're going to breathe harder, right? Now if you can like surrender the anxiety of it or whatever, say you're trying to run or whatever, if you can relax all the anxiety of, not being able to make it the full distance, or if you can dissociate yourself from the pain, and that's why exercise is really so good, because you take that pain and you overcome it. And that's just the fundamental of self-mastery. Anytime you can get yourself to do something that your body doesn't innately want to do, then the body becomes subject to the mind. How cool is that? Little trip glasses. But so if the body becomes subject to the mind, then you're not a slave to lustful desires anymore, and you can do anything with your life. So if you can transcend the need for anything, then you can do anything. And that's the higher law, basically. If you can release addiction or attachment to anything, then you can do anything. Or you can fully enjoy anything too. I just dropped out of college 2 days ago. These assignments were showing up, and I was just like, if I wasn't trying to get a degree, these assignments wouldn't be doing anything for me. Even in like these classes I really loved, it's like I feel like I learned more about this stuff on my own. And then I thought about it and how much time my studying was taking away from people. And I feel at this point in my life, I learn more from interactions than I do from any other person about like how the universe and the world works. Like this psychology classes couldn't tell me anything that I didn't already know. And I don't mean that to like, whatever. It's like I've spent so much time with people and like counseling them and this and that, and going on my mission for the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints. These psychology classes really can't tell me anything about human nature. And even if you learn every pattern of human nature that they teach you, it's honestly senseless when it comes to like actually breaking down a real human being. It's just nonsense. It's not even the same thing. So I might take a class on life coaching just to like learn some structures and stuff, because I'm not very business minded, to be honest. Like I actually can be. That's the whole thing that this keeps teaching me, is every time I think like I need to go externally for something, like, oh, maybe I'll get my life coaching certificate so I can show people I have a life coaching certificate. But it's like I said, it's like it's all intuition at this point, and like seeing things from an unbiased perspective. If you can do that, you can pretty much know anything, because in the present moment there is God and there is infinite intelligence, and it's there if you just seek it, recognize it, ask for it. Knock and you shall find, seek and it shall be open unto you. Or seek and you shall be found, knock and it shall be open unto you, Because in the present moment, it's like Nikola Tesla talks about it. He's like, there is a source of knowledge from which all inspiration comes. And he's talking about source. He's talking about God, the infinite intelligence. And he says, I know it exists because that's where innovation comes from. It's like hardly from our own minds do we like come up with a lot of these things. It's like, yeah, we work things out through like systematic processes and stuff like that, but some of the greatest innovations ever have just been pure imagination, just like out of dreams and things, and it's undeniable. But those things don't even have to be separate, because if you're in meditation, it's the same place as the dream world, which is that place of infinite consciousness where all information exists and is organized in the form of God, who is also conscious and loving and wants to give you free access to all this information should you need it. Not to say that like there isn't specific information. Like, I was thinking, okay, say I wanted to start up a business. It's like this is like the 3D world. You gotta like figure out who to talk to and things like that. And I couldn't even tell you that right now. But like, it's available for me to look up, like on Google. It's like, my dad's like, well, what if you want to learn how to, I was like, YouTube, Google, and it'll tell me exactly what I want to know how to do instead of school doing it in a totally roundabout and generic way. I don't know. That might just be me and how I learn, but I naturally break stuff down to its building blocks, so I really don't need the school to try to get me to do it in a way that doesn't make sense. Man, I've had some dope teachers though. And I'm glad I did school. I have no regrets. No regrets with school. Because I met a lot of people I was supposed to. I got over the fear. Like, basically, it's like you can't get around it. It's like my ego said, you have to go to school or you're a failure, basically. It's like you are not maximizing your potential in this life if you don't go to school. And maybe that was true up until now. Like, literally, that's the thing about, like, how your life works, and like that's how God sees it too. And that's why people like hold God to like these really rigid structures, and like what's true now must be true later, and that's just not how it is. It's like maybe you're supposed to go to school for 4 years and like take these classes like I did, like was like the history of like world psychology from like the beginning of humans, and from atoms to humans, teaching about like the lawful self-assembly of like energy to create atoms, to humans, to galaxies, to the universe and universes. Like, those classes I was really grateful for, but I think I basically capped out on the classes that I need to take for me, and I just don't see the purpose in getting a degree if I don't plan on working for anybody that's gonna ask me if I have one. And I'm not going to spend another like 6 years getting a master's degree, which I wanted to. I want to say I'm a PhD because I want to be freaking Dr. Smith. But am I really going to waste thousands of hours of my life so that I can tell people I'm a doctor when I could spend the same amount of time like in my own study and like actually living life and not being stressed for no reason? It's like, literally, you are going to live and you are going to die. If the stress is unnecessary, get rid of it. Man, I could do this all day, and I think I will. I'll try to make money off it. Give me some feedback if you guys think it's legit, but as we get things rolling, I can take specific questions and things like that, but this is how my brain works, and it has since I remember being 6 years old, wondering if everybody was a projection of my own imagination, and I was just like this little God seed sitting in God's mind and just forgot that I was God. And guess what? That's what I believe today. But y'all are real. Don't worry, or else I wouldn't be talking to you. It's just, you're just as real as me, but we all just forgot where we came from. Love you all. I'm going to enjoy the rest of the day, clean up the house some more. But stay tuned.